Hi, hope you're all doing well. I hope the semester is going well for you so far. This is an interesting module we have at this point in the course, and this particular talk is going to be brief because I've given you some good readings to go through to make sure you read those and kind of covers them much better in depth than I will in this short lecture. So please do read the things that are there in your module for this class. You'll be better off for that. We will also have a very interesting. You've already seen the guest lecturer, guest speaker that we've had available and spoken to us for this class. So it's really good. I think and try to put all that together for this. But for this video, like I said, it's gonna be short, really to direct you toward the the readings and also to provide the format for the little quiz at the end. But let's this quickly look at two things. One is sweat equity versus investment, venture capital type investment, and a little bit about the different funding series like A, B, seed funding, A, B, and C, how they work, and that's pretty obvious. But let's go to that one first. When you look at the funding, basically, there are different stages, and they follow logical order. There's like pre-seed funding where you have your own money or just very little money. You're just trying to get going. There's a great book that I often use for entrepreneurship classes called The $100 Startup, and that's for how do you get a business going with very little funds or no funds almost. How can you get that going? And that book is really great for any of you. I think you should have that. It gives real life examples of people that have started with very little money and how they've grown into a big business or a good business or a business at least they're satisfied with having. Maybe not the biggest business in the world, but one that allows them to live the kind of life they want to live. But since we're looking at trying to get bigger than that in this class, when you look at that, you have your pre-seed funding, then you go into seed funding, which is generally kind of friends, family, and other people, where you're just getting enough money together to come up with like a business plan and some initial operating expenses, and at that point you're really trying to attract the interest of bigger investors. So you want to get something off the ground, but more in the idea stage. Maybe you'll develop a website, a solid strategy, a business plan, have a few things going. Maybe you have your team kind of together, but that's all you really have. You just have barely enough money for that. And so then when you start attracting more interest, you'll move on to what's called Series A funding, which, as you might imagine, is when you first start approaching external investors, and they would, with the power of your pitch and the strength of your idea, you would entice them and interest them in putting money behind you. So there are a lot of companies that are involved with this, are trying to find those rare, investments at the early stage, and what they often do is they expect many of them not to pan out, but the few that do can turn into very large, propositions and maybe make them a lot of money. So here you're looking at, I don't know, maybe $2 million to $15 million of money that people will put in to get you from where your idea and to maybe your initial kind of things going to something that's more workable and something that can, with that initial Series A funding money, you can really start getting things into place and moving forward. Then from there, as you might think, a Series B funding is this your company's grown, you have you're on to the next level, you've got an established proposition, things are working well, and you're going to ask for more money to take to kind of carry on what you're doing. And really that's not that much different. It's just a larger Series A type thing, but it shows with some track record, and even more so when you look at a Series C, which is basically the idea there is companies are successful. They're quite successful, and they're growing, and they may be taking on a new market, expanding outside home country, adding, innovating into new product areas, etc. But from there, you're looking for a lot more money to take it to a much higher level. You've got to prove yourself more. People investing at that level are not interested in taking a shot. They really want something that's going to work. And so you'll be looking at hedge funds, private equity companies, and some major investors for that section. So those are the three primary section concept. Well, maybe five if you count pre-seed, but there's like pre-seed, seed, and then A level, B level, and C level funding to grow that. And please do read that, and so you'll see more. There are a lot of articles about that out, but that gives a really good idea, the reading on what those different ones mean. So let's talk quickly a little bit about sweat equity versus a venture capital or other investment. And a lot of this course, in the past, that's been a major part of it, and it is. It's important to figure out, will you be a person, if you want to get your company off the ground, will you be really interested in getting a bunch of investors that come in, or will you try to do the financing yourself, or will you get people together that say, we're willing to work hard, put our own resources in, but our compensation is going to be when this becomes successful. And that's really what sweat equity is all about. Sweat equity is like are people that are willing to work for the company and put in their knowledge and resources, what they can do, what can apply to the effort, in a hopes that things will become successful, and then it can benefit from that growth. In other words, so what you have to do is, if you say you've got 3 or 4 or 5, 8 friends, and then you identify other people that are out in the market that can do something, particularly when it's a technological innovation that you don't know how to do. It could be certain types of coding, it could be developing certain kind of things, it could be creating algorithms that, for example, maybe you're going to create an algorithm that enables you to take Instagram posts and just make a good credit decision from that. Or you're going to look at something where you can review social media things and pretty well predict how people would act at a jury trial. And so you're going to create that and then sell it to lawyers. So these kind of things, it's a good idea, but you don't know how to do that. So you have to find somebody who does. But you can't pay them because you don't have any money. You're just starting out. So, and sometimes you could pay them if you were to go out and get financing, but you don't want to give that away to the people, those shares away to the people in exchange for money. You'd much rather give shares to people that in exchange for their work. Of course, you all have seen, the Facebook movie and the big, in the beginning they had no money, but a friend of Zuckerberg's gave him some little bit of money in exchange for X% of the company. There was no company, so it seemed, why not? Of course, by now that little tiny X percentage huge. Same thing with Microsoft. You all know Bill Gates, but the other couple investors became multi-billionaires as well. They just happened to be there at the beginning. I mean, they did more than that. I shouldn't say they happened to be. They were there at the beginning. They don't have the same face that the company is. Bill Gates does, but they were there and they got a certain percentage. And that percentage turned into a gigantic amount of revenue. So that's everybody's dream, right? You're willing to work really hard. You're talking 20 hours a day, get something going, and then in exchange for shares in a company that eventually goes. And at the same time, when you have a great idea, you might think, I could get this, but I'd much rather share this with my friends. I'd rather see us all get wealthy. And at the same time, recognizing that maybe nothing good it won't happen. Your company idea is not going to work, and these things and it craters. But you're only out your hours of work. You're not in debt. So that's really the thing. So have a look at those 2 articles and see how that how they appeal to you. And I think that you'll see that there's kind of often a combination. You do a lot of sweat equity in the beginning, and then as you go get to a certain size, you have more options, and maybe you decide to stay with your original format and plan, or maybe you decide, at this size, at this stage, I can control the amount of equity I allow in through investments. I can control that, I can manage that, I can still retain control of the company, but grow as we need, faster than we would be able to otherwise, for example. So those are the things that you have to think about, and hopefully, as things as successful, you can manage that. There are any number of examples of people who have had great ideas. They get investors, they get people come in, and then they've given up so much of their company they lose a company, or it becomes different from what they wanted, and they end up leaving. And the company may continue on very successfully, but they're not there, or they have to go on to something else. And some people do that all the time. They continue to create companies, form an investor base. They expect to sell out and move on, and that's okay too. But you kind of want to control the process. Whatever happens to you, you'd rather be it under your own control. And so understanding how these things work, the sweat equity and the investment series, is really useful for you to know. It's not in high detail what you're reading, but at least you're able to read the paper and see what's going on. Or when you have a meaningful conversation with people when they talk about different ways you might fund your initial company. Okay, hope that makes sense to you, and talk to you soon.